Yeah.
I get it adds to it.
Well,
No more bathrooms.
I like to eat.
Right.
I don't want the pomp and circumstance.
Right.
Voting didn't tell me he wasn't gonna be here,
Well,
and,
that plate looks really.
Ashley Fuller
There's
didn't say
nothing
she
there.
wasn't gonna be
Yeah,
here.
no, I agree.
We
I
tell
don't
you.
think I really asked.
all the
Is
time.
there a?
Is that, so you're, is your wife working there?
Yes.
Five people.
Yeah, we were at
Four
a
is a
meeting
quorum
a month ago or
to
so. She
start,
asked me
but we
about
don't,
BNI
but we
that
still,
I'm
we
in.
have
We have enough.
nine
enough.
members, so to
I'll
pass
stop back in.
anything.
Does she work there often? Okay.
We have enough.
Yes.
I'll stop back in. I
Yeah,
gotta
she's
remember.
a graduate.
Okay, we do
Yeah,
have
she's-
time, good, okay.
It isn't me.
Yeah, I hear
Um,
that.
We got a sixth one somewhere.
So you staying busy?
Yeah,
No.
and this,
We're
We're waiting
well,
on,
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that time of year, things,
Ashley and Mike.
that's helping a lot, yeah. That is. And a week or two of decent warm weather.
there it is.
Yeah.
Let's move on with this,
Yeah.
right?
No, we have to vote on stuff we already voted on. So,
I'm just listening to you.
yeah, we'll do that.
Do you have can I have an extra packet? Matt? Can I have an extra packet, because I missed something.
On the commission.
Do you have an extra?
Who are those gentlemen?
I knew you
We're
would
still
be
learning
back.
everybody.
Okay, no, no, no,
I showed
no.
this to James, I got that mail.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
but he also wants that, the,
Yeah.
okay.
Very good.
And he wasn't here last week.
My-
Was better than the packets that said,
And then,
continue
I
your.
don't know if Ashley's
And you're James, you're James Christian, okay. And Ashley was sitting next to me last time.
I was blowing my name on and on, I opened it up, it's like.
Josh is the chairman.
These guys aren't going
He
to
sits
stop.
up there, but he's a.
My dad, someone tell us,
That's
sometimes
okay.
he would bring home resumes that he
That's
got.
so great.
to kind of like, show us at dinner.
Having a spelling bee tonight, and that
My
means that
favorite
she
one that I'll
probably
never
did pretty
forget,
well
right there,
with
the
the
top
top.
of her,
Yep.
under strengths.
Alternate?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Attention.
I
The
he was
teacher
like,
made
wow,
sure
I'm
we
not
were
hiring him, but I
see
am
how
holding
well
up that
I did
resume.
better spelling bee, like, I know.
It's after hours, that means that it's not a.
Yeah,
normal stuff,
right, exactly, it didn't
Yeah.
just happen, like,
I
during
was
school.
told not to list politics or anything that might be considered beneath my age. And I had to ask her, what's
You have to have a
God, listen,
sermon
I
on.
hear you're in.
So you have to, before you hear it, but
And
you're
you're
going
going,
to.
well, that doesn't mean anything. Such that lady out the blind works on. That's basically what I told her, and she's like, well, this could cost you a job. And I said, you've already hired me, so what exactly does it matter at this
It's up
point?
to you.
This is the council.
Yeah, that's what we start with.
I put it on every one of my resumes.
Probably so.
Now, I lost my little card.
4 or 5 meetings that I came to, we didn't do.
I got that.
Okay, I get it, you guys always gotta bring it up.
Track too,
That
but I like.
You're an Eagle Scout, he's an Eagle Scout, the Yep. mayor's an Eagle Scout, Yep. my son's an Eagle Scout, and I'm a flunky. I mean. Hey, I'm your.
So it's 6:30, so we're gonna bring the
Okay.
Marion City Planning Commission meeting to,
All right, let's rock.
we open with the Pledge of Allegiance, correct? Flags behind us? Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, the first item of old business is the zoning proposals, 2 zoning proposals have been returned from the Zoning and Annexation Committee. Evelyn, are you able to?
I am. Okay, the first item, and this was amending the zoning code to regulate use regulations in the OI, office institutional, and in districts to include opioid treatment programs and office-based opioid treatment facilities. Now, we did all vote on those before, but we had somewhat of a split vote, and upon, which was like 4 to 3, because at that time we had 7 present at our commission, and that is not enough to prove. While it was a majority of those present, it takes 5 of you to act to push it on to full council. So they requested we revote on that. And so to refresh your memory, we had, let me get my little cheat sheet. Bear with me a second on, this is what happens when I bring too many pieces of paper. Sorry about this. I just got it out so I'd have it for quick reference.
So Evelyn, real quick, while you're
Yeah.
doing that, I just realized that I forgot to take roll.
Oh, go ahead, you guys do that.
Mr. Ryan? Here. Mr. Dunstan?
Here.
Mr. Daniels? Mrs. Russell?
Here.
Mrs. Pullins? Mr. Ruth?
Yes.
Mayor Collins? Director Bodine? Mr. Zucker?
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna wing it. Okay, so if you recall, we had talked about putting opioid treatment facilities, which in this case also include methadone clinics, in either, anywhere, kind of, a real loose, real moderate, middle of the road, or very strict. And what we decided is that we would list them specifically in the office institutional district, which then, that way it rolls up into office institutional apartment, so it does go into those districts. So those are places that involve medical treatment of other sorts. So that way it just is listed, as a principal permitted use. We had talked about, did we want them to be a principal permitted use by just right, or a conditional permitted use, which would say they always had to go for the Board of Appeals. This would put them in the category of principal permitted use. They're just, if you're in the office institutional, and then they're basically treated like other medical facilities. So that would be in the OIA and office institution and OIA only as principal permitted uses. So they don't go into the commercials, they don't go into they don't roll anywhere else, they just stay in those office-based districts.
What's the difference between OI and OIA?
OIA allows for apartments as well, office,
Okay.
institutional, and apartment.
Evelyn, did the zoning and annexation committee voice any concerns with the wording of the ordinance as presented to them?
No, so far we've not had comments on wording as much, other than on our, when we got into family.
So their main concern was it didn't have 5 votes
In favor.
in favor. And so if we were to play it forward, and I don't know that this is going to happen, say that it doesn't get 5 tonight, because that's all that's here. Do we start over? Is that what happens? Because it is my understanding that this committee doesn't get readings.
Correct, we'll just
So
hang here
it
until
will
it can
just-
come out of here to, since they're requesting we get at least the 5, I believe we would not send it on to, zoning and annexation committee until it came out, since that's their request, because it was the committee that sent it back to us for revoting. So we can vote today, see how it shakes out, and if it doesn't get, in this case unanimous, 5 out of 5 present, then can vote again at next month's meeting, or it'll.
So
stay.
it doesn't die.
No, it doesn't die. It will just stay here.
So that's, because I want people to vote their conscience. I don't want them to vote to move it forward just to get it out of here. I want you to vote how you truly feel. But at the same time, and I don't want it to die, because it's an important piece of legislation and it's an important piece of cleaning up the zoning of Marion. And I don't want people to feel obligated to vote a way they wouldn't normally vote if there would have been more people here, if that makes sense. So, since, I mean, was it the same for the other one as well? They didn't have
No,
enough?
that one, they just wanted us to look at some different things. They
Okay.
had some
So,
questions and concerns that they thought we should look at.
so on our agenda, the first piece, it would be zoning, and it would say 2, office institution changes.
Yeah.
They just want to vote on that one to try to get above 4.
Correct.
The second one would be, the heavy lifting for us is they want some verbiage cleaned up
Yes.
in that one. So,
Right, yeah, that one has 2 definitions, and I'll get into that. They are family, and as you can recall, even in our own conversations here, we kind of started to get into the weeds. They also question tourist, if the tourist home, as it is presently worded in the zoning code, was equivalent to the short-term rental that we were proposing. And so when I looked at that more, I found that, yeah, actually, the tourist home that's already in the code would be very similar to it. So we may just change the definition of tourist home to say, including things such as Airbnb, short-term rental, vacation rental property, and then just keep it where it presently is. So we're not changing any location, just expanding the existing definition to make sure that modern terminology is understood in that definition.
just as a recommendation, would you recommend voting on all of these things as a whole? Or
No,
would you
I would do 'em
just do them individually? So, because the one we just need a vote, the other one we haven't got to, we need to talk on, and then there's a third one.
The third is kind
So-
of going through the rest of the code. And we may, if you want, you're welcome to even hold the opioid, if, we can vote and just kind of see where it is.
Yeah.
But if you want to, again, at the end of the meeting, after we've gone through more of the code and you have a little deeper understanding of that, see if anybody wants to change the proposal, because you'll have a little more information that you might say, well, the way it's worded right now, you're not in favor with 4, but maybe you would like it to expand it to some other districts, and maybe you can get a consensus of 5 out of that. And again, Ken's going to explain a little bit more on how the districts, and giving you each copies of the code, how they roll into each other. So you may, by the end of of our meeting, have come up with a brainstorming idea on how to fix
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
This is my second meeting, so I don't know a lot, and I was not here for the first thing. But so what is it that we need to get 5 votes for, is to where to put them, or to, like, where they're okay to be? Like, what is that
Yes,
for?
we're putting it in the code and identifying which zoning district they would be permitted.
Like, what does that mean, zoning district, though? Sorry.
That's okay, let me show you
No.
a map, and so that might make it a little more clear.
I'm sorry, I don't want to vote on something.
Yeah. No, and that's a good question. So I'm going to look here on our
So each color represents a
colors. So,
corresponds up here.
Okay,
These are all districts of zones that you
okay,
can have. We're proposing that
there's
these
kind of a salmon
right here
color.
okay.
is where
They go.
opioid treatment centers go. So here,
And those are like live-in facilities, or
No,
just, okay,
just treatment.
okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
that is very helpful.
Mhm,
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so, right, so for instance, that's OIA, so anything that's that color in the city, and then this kind of more beige is OI, office institutional. You tend to see that around, it's kind of along the state route, like Church's Center Street. It's particularly around the hospital. At this scale, it's kind of harder to
Yeah,
find them.
Not the whole
Oh, well, that's this here, that's the prison, so that's why it's institutional, but right, all of that is.
In case you want.
True, and then we get
And then
it.
these are the, yeah, okay.
And that's why we're.
Right, and if you think that's too restrictive, then you could say, well, what other colors would you want it in? You know,
They were the one right there.
Yeah.
okay.
I wasn't sure, because I think I was getting confused about the two things, because one of is for like living,
Yes.
right?
Right, and this
Living
one is,
treatment, and this is
was
just
the
for-
treatment
Okay,
facilities.
because the one that I was here for was that one.
Was the
Yeah.
recovery house.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
So I think I just needed to get that straight.
No, that's okay, because they're all such very similar,
Please.
subject matters. I might, I'm gonna move this one over there, and if we get into
Thank
things
you.
that people want.
No,
to
that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, just in case we do start changing ideas as to what other districts. Right, and so this, kind of peachy, I guess, is the OIA, and the tan is the OI, just like it is up here at the prisons. We tend to have it, I think that's Church Street, and, you know, some of the,
Marion County, I suppose, would be
Right.
fine, but.
The issue for me, how it doesn't-
I think it was.
Yes.
19 also in this binder, really helpful.
Okay, thank you, which I just got tonight, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you open to page 19,
Yeah.
that'll be helpful.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just found this too, so.
Perfect,
Is that the descriptions of each one?
It's got them all listed out.
thank you.
Okay, so when we went with a moderate approach, okay, and that does put that, I'm gonna correct, it's OI, OIA, and then it also does roll up into the C5, which is the general commercial, district.
So it'll be the green.
General commercial is mostly on the edges of town,
Right, so I might
North
be-
Main, Delaware Avenue,
Right.
Mhm.
95.
Yep, so they're kind of, now you're hitting all our main, drags, basically, I think that might be the C5 up and down Main Street. That's where, I think one of the Bright View is up here on Main Street, one of the other ones down by the mall, I think there was one out on Center Street or something
So it
already.
looks like this.
Okay.
Binders already been.
So.
Yep, it is.
Well, yeah, they're used ones that we saved and we're looking.
Very nice.
I do want to see if the C5, I want to see how that says, just prove that it
So, yeah,
is
you
into
still have
there.
before, so if you have any questions.
C4 rolls
Fire 'em
into
away.
C5. It rolls into C4, rolls into C5.
I know, but this, we're not listing it in the C4 though.
you have a kitty tonight? Yeah,
Oh.
he's got kids, bro. Him and Bobby's.
Well, if it's not, then it might not fall.
They're down on me.
Says limited to OI and OIA only as principal use permits.
Right. I guess, so then,
Hey, Evelyn, are you aware of what would happen if we were to, take this piece of legislation, and because there are gonna be questions on what everything is, if we were to move it to the end
yep,
to vote on it, it may be helpful for people because we're gonna move through definitions of what things are.
I agree.
And then at that point, we can have a vote at the end of the meeting on this particular piece of business, and it will streamline the process because we'll get a little bit of
Yeah, you'll,
edification on what things are moving forward.
I
So
agree.
if we were to do that, that would be a motion, and somebody would need to make a motion, correct? So they would need to make a motion to move this to the end because it is,
No, you don't have to make a motion, but
Because
if
it's-
everybody's
That's
in
your
agreement.
prerogative as a chairman.
well, my only thing is it's first.
Mhm.
So, and we've started into it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'll motion to move it to the end.
To the end?
Yep.
Okay.
yeah,
So
so I
then,
would need a second.
Second.
Second. Please take roll.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Dunstan?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Ruth?
Yeah.
Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
All righty, thank you. So moving on to the next piece is the ordinance to amend zoning and the existing definitions.
So you should, I hope, have the ordinance that states family and then and tourist home. So right now, family is, existing definition is a person living alone or two or more persons living together as a single housekeeping unit in a dwelling unit. Tourist home is a building or part thereof other than a hotel, motel, boarding house, lodging house, or rooming house where lodging is provided for transients by a resident family in its home for compensation. So we were suggesting amending family to be a person living alone or in two or more persons, and we did take your advice, we looked at Troy, Christian, and then it put in parentheses, regardless, and this would be new, regardless of relationship by blood, marriage, adoption, or guardianship, living together as a single housekeeping unit in a dwelling unit, a group occupying a nursing home, rest home, convalescent home, halfway house, recovery house, as defined in Ohio Revised Code, boarding house, lodging house, rooming house, hotel, motel, fraternity, or sorority house is not considered a family within this zoning code. The issue that came up at council on that was because we were still using the phrase housekeeping unit, and that's not defined. So they were hesitant to let us, so we had talked about at council committee, striking the word housekeeping out of all of this. And just to living as a single unit, and then maybe still coming up with a definition.
Mr. Barr.
Go ahead.
Clarity, Sean Barr, First Ward City Council, just for some clarity, the housekeeping unit terminology came up with a lawyer with one of the sober living facilities that we are currently in litigation with, and he had a host of definitions about the housekeeping unit and how they could do this and that, so we were a little reluctant to go down that path again without at least defining that or eliminating that housekeeping unit. So I just wanted you to have some background of why that was kind of a red flag, because that was kind of thrown back at us in this whole process on with, you know, Ashley's on Cortland, that whole sober living facility there. So I just wanted you guys to know, well, that's kind of why that was a kickback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's why they have not vacated their units, is because they have a countersuit against the city for violating fair
So
housing.
what is your take? I think it sounds like just eliminating that will.
I think for now, until we came up with, I wouldn't want to put a definition of housekeeping unit in there unless we knew it could stand up.
Mr. Prater could probably answer to it, but I believe Mr. Rollins was comfortable with striking housekeeping unit. It was that the gist of the conversation on your committee?
Okay.
Striking housekeeping. What'd you say?
Just say living together in a dwelling unit.
So it's the term housekeeping unit that is currently being used to cause issues for the city, and we can either, if I'm understanding correctly, we can either define what a housekeeping unit is for Marion, or we can just axe that term completely. I don't even know what it is now. Like, I've never even heard of it. Like, I didn't even know it was a thing.
We wasn't either until that attorney got up and spoke.
Right.
I would say house tending, housekeeping, housekeeping,
Well,
something along those lines.
Legally, it tends to mean, and you can add more, I remember back in planning school, we talked about, you know, land use law. It was usually the angle people went into which, because some communities might say, oh, you can't have sorority houses because they're not family or things like that. But if you are living together with common kitchen facilities, and everybody's basically eating family style. You have a bedroom, and you're otherwise a unit, that's where they would say, well, we're no different than a family. So that's why we're trying to, at least in our family definition, say family is our more traditional version of family, not including all of these other basically communal living arrangements, which may or may not be related. Because they also could then say they live a one housekeeping unit. It could be the fraternity, it could be a rooming house, it could be a variety of things. And some of these things vary by whether or not they have a common kitchen, whether or not they each have a bedroom separate, or if they're renting, etc. So have you had?
My thing is, you have to go to the housekeeping, but it has to be, it can be something that's more permanent, not transitory.
Correct.
Not having somebody, if it's a fraternity, that they're not having new people come in every month.
I think the term you're looking for is long-term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask Evelyn, if we decide to strike just that out, what happens after that?
Then it's going to go to city council as a potential definition, and then they'll vote on it. They'll have 3 readings and stuff, and then it will become the new definition of family.
So
Doesn't mean we can't in the future come up with some ironclad definition of housekeeping, but I would
Because
want
they're
more.
saying that a dwelling, not a housekeeping unit.
Correct. We're just saying they're in the house. That's good enough. So yeah, and I don't know, we may find out more at the end of this court case, that maybe
Yeah.
tells us.
That's why I'm saying if we just delete it, then that gets taken care of. I mean, I don't think there's gonna be any reason for us to define it until we find out what happens in this law case.
Is that your motion?
I'm gonna make a motion that we vote on it now.
Okay, so just to be clear, your motion is that we strike the word housekeeping unit from the ordinance.
As a
correct?
single housekeeping unit.
Single housekeeping unit.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Take the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Dunstan?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Ruth?
Yes.
Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
Moving on, it's just to be clear, because I'm glad we all got that out of the way. It is a reactive solution to present any proactive problems moving forward, correct? So we're reacting to what they're saying because they should have left a long time ago, so we're reacting to that. But we're also at the same time setting ourselves up to protect the city
Right.
moving forward should any of that nonsense have to happen again. And
Well, it gives us some
They are-
time to figure out what that definition
yeah,
can be that is rock solid.
Yeah.
now we're gonna move forward to tourist home.
So Councilman Schauber
Take that guy.
asked us to look back to see where tourist home is listed and how is it defined. And tourist home is listed in the zoning code. Ken, can you flip through quickly and find where it is? I think it's under the residential charts.
Page 14.
Thank you. My assistant today.
Mine too.
Okay, so that is the definition, is on your page 14. And then also, it shows up on page 25 in a chart, and of what's allowed in the residential districts. So they are allowed in the R2 and the R3 districts. So those are, general dwelling and our multifamily. Basically everything except for the single family. So that's where That's kind of where we were gonna put them anyway, when we were talking about short-term rentals. I think we were going with even more strict, just the R3s. But if it's, I could live with R2, I guess. And then R2s and R3s do roll up into the, some of the commercial districts. So again, that would be fine to have, Airbnbs or whatever downtown upstairs in the commercial properties or in the multifamily property, zones. So the suggestion is to take the existing tourist home definition, keep it right where they are presently allowed, because there's no sense in, eliminating what's already there, but expand that definition to say, a building or part thereof, other than a hotel, motel, boarding house, lodging house, or rooming house, where lodging is provided for transients by the property owner. And I'm taking out the resident family in its own home, because that was presuming it was always taking place in a house, like your old-fashioned bed and breakfast. Here, we do nowadays have, they're in mixed-use buildings, et cetera. And the owner does not necessarily live in that same unit that they're currently renting. But, so, provided for by transients by the property owner, strike a residential family in its home, in a residential unit for compensation for periods of less than 30 days, then owner occupancy is not required. So they don't have to be in a place where the owner is next door in the next room. That this is more, I think, what all of us have maybe experienced if you've been doing any vacation rentals, which is maybe the house is empty and they're just renting it as is. But keep confining them into the commercial and the multifamily districts. That way, a single-family neighborhood that has your very traditional single-family homes, they're not having the party house next door renting out every weekend to somebody strange. So that was the suggested wording on this, unless you guys have any other suggestions. Just make sure, I said also refer to as short-term rental, bed and breakfast, or vacation rental. I know Airbnb is a name brand, but I think these cover the more generic terms that we would call them nowadays.
So just to be sure, Councilman Shaver wanted a more, not a broad, but a better definition of tourist home.
Yeah,
And then-
we were proposing a definition of short-term rental, and as it turns out, it's very similar to a definition that does already exist in the zoning code, which is tourist home. So we didn't really need to come up with one because there was one already, but we should make it so that people understand what that term means. Because it may not be intuitive that it meant like a bed and breakfast.
Understood. So is there any motion on this portion?
And
Yeah. I'll motion to approve.
Okay, James,
I'll second.
thank you.
And just to clarify, this is combining the tourist
Yes,
and the,
Short-term?
short-term
Short-term.
rental into one
okay.
definition.
Yes, sir. Could you take the roll, please?
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dunstan,
Yes.
Mrs. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Ruth,
Yes.
Mr. Zucker.
Yes.
Question. Now that we've amended these, we would need to vote to send the amended piece of legislation back to
Council.
Council, correct? Does anybody have any questions, or would anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Dunstan?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Roof?
Yes.
And Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
All righty. Next order is definitions for zoning.
Actually, that was it.
That was it, and then now we're on to new business. Review of Marion City zoning code.
Hey, get started here? Excuse me. Does everybody have like a front back summary of, okay, Dave, use that council. And then Zach probably.
Thank you.
I just made up a little, of some of the things I'm gonna hit, just forward. Now, the idea of this is people, talk about the zoning code and the updating it. We thought it'd be good to like, maybe spend half hour, 45 minutes, and you can cut me off whenever you want. Starting to go through quickly, what's in there, and then next month, finish it, just to give an overview of how everything fits together. Then you can always go back and look at different sections more closely. But this summary, I'm just gonna go over this summary first. The current zoning ordinance was developed in 1970 to replace zoning based on what they called permissive use, which they were told at the time was dubious, of dubious legality. That's the story that was told to me. I guess when you wanted to do something, they would get a meeting with the neighbors in front of council, and people would sort of vote, and it was kind of arbitrary. So that's why they came up with the new zoning code. It has been amended, we've amended it many times over the years. On the positive side, the code has many dimensional standards and exceptions that recognize the fact that much existing development was constructed on small lots or could have multiple uses. It has mechanism already built in to allow the zoning inspector, to allow Zach over here, to use these sections without necessarily having to go to the Board of Appeals each time. For example, averaging front yard setback. Code might require a 30-foot yard setback for a house, but if there's existing neighborhood and they're 20 feet back on either side of the vacant lot, he can allow the new house to be 20. Doesn't have to go to the zoning code. If there's an existing house that's a little bit smaller than required, there's a section in here, and when we go through it, I can show it to you, that allows him to take off so many feet off of each of the setbacks. Expansion of non-conforming uses, that actually has to come to the Board of Appeals, but there's ways, it tells you how to do it. Home occupations are another thing the zoning inspector can approve if they meet certain conditions. Second, the code has cross-references to other sections which almost always complete the information required. Unlike sections of the Ohio Revised Code that sometimes misrelate sections or have dead ends. If you ever used to, we were talking about that today in another meeting. The code, partly because of the amendments we have passed, is ahead of current trends advocated by national planning and home builders organizations in some areas. For example, not requiring off-street parking downtown, that's one example. Reduced parking requirements for 55 and over housing units. Allowing residential development in commercial districts. Home builders of Central Ohio just proposed that about a year ago. We already do it. Allowing smaller homes under certain conditions. We allowed, we went down from 900 square feet to 700 square feet homes if there's storage. like a garage or something that people can store something on. And then, when we go through here, we can point that out. And I think, Mike, you might have been on when we did that. For many houses, that's something that has to be addressed. You guys have allowed it where there was a single ownership of several. A church did it. Okay. Allowing manufacturers' homes to be placed sidewise on residential lot if certain conditions are met. Basically, they gotta have a door facing the street. They gotta alter it to put a door facing the street, so you don't have a blank wall. Negative. Some of the terms need to be translated or made relevant to the current usage. Well, right now, you are amending the definition of tourist homes. That's kind of an old term. And how it relates to bed and breakfast and short-term rentals. And then we are also addressing family and housekeeping unit. Number 2, parking requirements in many districts are over-restrictive, leading to much unused pavement. 3, there can be exceptions with conditions for very small homes, and you really haven't done that completely yet. 4, the issue of whether or not you should allow granny flats in single-family districts. This is where you would let a smaller unit be attached to a single-family home for a relative, like an elderly relative.
Mother-in-law apartment.
Yeah, mother-in-law, there's a whole bunch of mother-in-law apartments. That may be better, yeah, that's probably a better terminology. The sign section is cumbersome and might partially violate recent court decisions. I'll tell you, the 2 areas that have changed the much is this housekeeping family thing and signs. And signs is more like what's free speech. So it's not, there's a lot of different things coming up when we get to the signs. It needs to be clarified, and it's especially important to the administration and city planning, what zoning covers and what city planning without zoning covers. So, number 1, zoning regulates the use of private property. So, somebody's house, somebody's business is private property. 2, when any government entity other than the federal government, the state of Ohio could not pass rules for the federal government. So if the federal government wants to put a military base in or something, they go by their own rules. But if it's a state, building, county, city, any government wants to buy or sell land or construct a building, for example, city hall, a fire station, county building, public school within the city limits, or widen, narrow, or vacate a public street or alley, I mean, you've had alley vacations, the plans must be submitted to the Marion City Planning Commission for approval of the location and extent of the improvement. That's what the law says. Now, you can bring up all different things about the location, you can bring up the size, you can bring up whether it should have trees, anything you want in that public, for like a fire station or across the street for the county building, was reviewed. So you have to review all these. Now, the final body, and this should be jurisdiction, not justification. Spell check must have got the final body of jurisdiction. For example, if it's an alley vacation in the city of Marion, or a city fire station, for example, if it's a county building, it would be the county commissioners. If it's a public school, it would be the school board. May override the city planning commission's actions, but it must be then by at least a two-thirds. I got 2 over 2. Boy, I need to look at this better. Two-thirds majority. So this would apply, for example, for a new station, a fire station. It might also review, like the proposed, we were talking about the proposed gateway arc that is planned, because that's in the right of way. But again, I mean, the city council gets the final vote. They can, like an alley vacation, they can modify or do something different than what you recommend by a two-thirds vote. So that's just a nutshell. And then what I want to do now is just quickly go through the first half, roughly the first half of this book here. And I think next time what we should do is get a good fold-out map like that and punch holes in it and put it in these books. If people can bring these back next time, we'll bring that and put them in, then we're gonna make some more copies for the people
I think I
that.
have some more of those maps upstairs.
Okay,
Okay.
From other meetings that.
yeah, I think I.
Yeah, we can just we'll put them in and we'll make up a few more books in case, for the other members, in case some other city council people come. So, okay, so the first part of the code has about plating. We've got subdivision regulations for the city and county. That's something different that's reviewing new streets and utilities. So the first section, I'm just gonna go through this real quick. We got the definitions. If you go page through your book, I've highlighted in yellow some of the things that stand out on page 7, dwelling. You know, that's what you define as a dwelling is important. And then you get into what's a pre-assembled dwelling, a two-family, floor area. The definition of the floor area is important for what Zach does, in case somebody has something that's real shallow, real short. Home occupation is an occupation which is carried out in the home, provided it is incidental to the residential use and meets the requirements of 116301, which is back further, which we'll eventually get to. Another key definition is what is a lot. And I'm just going through this because I want to hit certain things and see how this. So you got definitions of signs, everything,
And one thing with signs, there are the types of sign as well as the, whether it's an accessory sign versus, principal permitted use itself. Then there's also
and we got them highlighted. I got them highlighted later in the book.
In addition to the types of sign, whether they be wall mounted, freestanding, etc. So you kind of can get into the nuances even in the definitions.
So if you have a shoe store, an accessory sign is saying Joe's Shoe Store, where a non-accessory sign is something for somewhere else.
Can you go over page 29?
Page 29. That's the use permitted in the OIA district?
Yeah.
Since we're talking about.
Yep.
Okay. So, it allows dwellings ancillary to permitted office and institutional uses, so that would be related to those actual uses, and you're not going to get too many of those types of dwellings. Like a hospital would have like a Ronald McDonald home or something like that. I mean, that's not going to generally be the
Prison might
case.
have the wardens.
Yeah. So OI is office institutional, businesses, professional offices, and then I think it's pretty much hospitals. It's not necessarily retail commercial.
And this is where we were gonna put the opioid treatment,
Because of number 4.
which would be just like with the hospitals, schools, other institutions providing social, cultural, education, and health services.
So a lot of this is around the hospital, for example.
Yeah.
Then OIA adds apartments. That's on page 32. So it allows everything in the OI district plus apartments. But these are based on density of, the occupying the land area, which is a different way of doing it, which you can do in newer sections of town. It doesn't really work as much in the older sections of town. Yeah, James?
With our current approval of this, since it does have residential apartments, in theory, if someone opened up an opioid treatment center in OIA, could they let people stay there, like, and get treatment like a rehab center?
Yeah, they would, because.
They would be able to?
Because I think that's where some of them are looking, that's where we have, like, because we do a lot
Monarch
of.
House and stuff?
Yeah, Monarch House,
That's
Viceroy.
exact.
Not, yeah,
not opiate, but
different types of, housing.
That's why I was curious about it.
Yeah.
'Cause that's kind of the opposite of what we do with
So-
rehab.
Just to combine two conversations, is my understanding the last time that we discussed where treatment facilities in general should go, that the reason that we were all able to settle on this is because it's already in the code as a quote-unquote medical
Exactly.
designation. We were trying very hard to keep them out of neighborhoods. So if we put them near the hospital, it's kind of adjacent hospital function, no real issue there. Don't want them next to BHE. So, the apartment portion of it though would be the same, not a one-for-one comparison, but it would be similar to a stay in a hospital, correct? Like if you were going to be checked into a hospital because you're gonna have your heart operated on, your stay there would be a similar, not
in the
one-for-one.
OI district,
Yeah,
in the OIA, you can actually have apartment buildings, like some of the buildings on
Executive
Crescent.
Drive or.
Executive Drive, that's OIA. So you gotta look, and again, we need the maps here probably to show, some of those areas are zoned OI, other ones are zoned OIA.
They're not that far off from each other though, on the
No.
map. They're not like.
Right, they're
not
next to each other.
Excessively far away from each other.
Yeah,
They're right-
that whole
They're
district.
pretty
has-
much right on top of each other and they all overlap and fall within each other. So, my concern is that this committee is not allowed readings. If it comes here, we have to vote on it and move it, either move it forward or let it
Back.
stay here and then vote on it again and have more discussion on it. I'm open to either, but this is very helpful, thank you. The apartment caveat doesn't necessarily give me any pause, but I don't want to speak for people who aren't here. Because the people who aren't here were no votes last time. I want them to be heard on this so that they're completely comfortable with what we've done moving forward, would be my wish. But if somebody makes a motion when we get to it to move it out, we'll entertain it. But it's the apartment function that is going to give people pause. Because I don't think that you're going to be able to actively talk to people and say, oh, by the way, you can have opioid treatment facility and the person can live there. Like, permanently.
Okay, if it's an apartment building, it's gotta be an apartment building, it
So it can't be both.
can't be mixed use.
So we're sure on that.
Be able to have mixed use?
I mean, if it
If
has
you have an
to be,
apartment development that's approved by the zoning inspector, on the layout and everything, gives the permit for apartment complex, like on,
Executive Drive.
that's gonna be it. Now, I suppose somebody could sell off one of
Well,
the
I'm just
buildings
saying,
and
what if
convert
it's a
it.
recovery type of center? And
Oh,
they're
they could put it-
providing
if there was a
housing and they
vacant
have
lot.
their own offices, yeah.
If there was a vacant lot next to it, yeah, they could, like on Independence Drive, if that was zoned, I don't know what it is, but, they could put it there, but they're not gonna put it within an existing apartment complex.
no, my point was, and that's a really good point, Ken. My point was, let's just take, because Mr. Zucker is sitting here, if Mr. Zucker's building where his sandwich shop is, if the space above it, if he decided that he had people that he wanted to rent that space to, that would become an apartment on top of a restaurant, which would be mixed use.
Right.
So if I have a building as such in an IOA, and the first floor is a 9 to 5 treatment facility, but the second floor is the apartments for people who may or may not get treatment at the facility, there's going to be people who have pause with that. with that because it is mixed use, even if it's just one apartment in the whole building. And the person who runs the place lives there, they're still gonna be like, why are they living above a treatment
But
facility?
we put recovery, if you recall, we put recovery,
Housing.
housing for that very reason in the R3 district, I believe. And
Yeah.
R3 is multifamily, which so is, multifamily is also allowed in the OIA, so I think it
Right.
would be the same.
I'm playing devil's advocate here for the people who
Yeah,
are not here, because, again,
They need to be heard.
yeah, and they were no votes last time. Before that, and I feel comfortable saying they were not aware of this information.
I would agree.
So, because as a yes vote, I wasn't aware of that information. It doesn't change when I vote, but I wasn't aware of it. So, Mike,
Okay, I think we're gonna have to look at this, a good point, and I think between now and the next meeting, we can look into it more. But I think we're gonna find out, downtown, we allow buildings to have a first floor, the building itself to be mixed use.
right,
In these other, the definition of apartment and townhouses, they can have offices, but the definition, I don't think is gonna allow it to be, part of it's gonna be a clinic.
go ahead.
Yeah, this was before I became clerk, but the opioid center we approved over here on Church Street. One of the concerns I had initially, because I take care of the Masonic Lodge next door, the second floor of that building was set up as an apartment. And I know they've had people living in there before, because when you're in the room next door behind a brick wall and you hear a bunch of people giggling in the middle of the night, you kind of wonder if your building's haunted or what's going on. But that was part of my concern, that, treatment centers going in downstairs, it's always been two separate spaces. Are they going to make use of the upstairs as an apartment? And until, it came through planning commission, I was happy with the decision that you guys made before it went on to council. So I would just want to express that, but that was part of my concern, because a lot of these buildings downtown and in a few other places, they may not be zoned for it. You may not even know they're there. People have put nice little apartments upstairs, so they got a place to hide, or if they're working late, they got a place to stay, and then they sell the building and somebody moves in and, hey, we got a fully functioning kitchen up here, bathroom, bedroom, living room.
We're gonna take advantage of it.
Right.
See, the other thing though, too, you gotta get involved within, when you mix those juices, you gotta get involved with the state building code. Now, the
Right.
trouble is, unless he catches something, the state people might be not the biggest idea.
Right, because I know when the B Church had that building, they had a women's shelter up there,
Yeah.
and that's where the giggling came from.
How
So,
much,
I didn't know that until we started hearing noises.
I can look, so we don't get derailed, and look at that, and then look at the definitions in the OIA district, and see if you have an apartment complex, whether somebody can go to the zoning inspector and have a right to ask for part of that be changed. It would have to go to this, it'd be a change of use.
well, although some are requesting developments that are designed to be clinics and have group housing within.
Well, but then they have to do it at that time, as a
Yeah,
new development.
yeah, as a new development.
It's not gonna be where he's
Not
talking
like
about
an after
existing
fact.
existing people living in apartments, all of a sudden waking up. and
Like the old
finding-
sanitarium over here.
Right.
But if they're all principal permitted uses, and someone comes to him saying, I wanna change part of my apartment complex to also have a clinic,
how much
he
do,
just has to sign that, cause it's
And
right there in
Marion.
the code, then.
I'll have to look that up, because I don't think.
and
it-
Marion, how much do OI and OIAs overlap? Do we know? Do
We
we know
need-
how
we
much
should bring-
overlapping
We should bring the
there
maps,
is?
because they're right next to each
I mean,
other.
because I understand, but I don't, are these hard, like, lines, like, there's
Yeah.
this stop, like, it's a firm stop? It
Yeah.
just doesn't bleed into anything else?
Around the property line.
Right. It's
Right,
around
so-
property lines, until somebody
The bottom portion here
rezones something, then it
is
can be-
OI and OIA.
Mhm.
But these aren't basically overlaid on top of each other to incorporate each other. If this area is peach and that's OIA, it's technically could be OI, but it's not, it's OIA. That's
Correct.
what it is.
Right, and
So-
then if OIA allows things within the OI, because right now they pyramid up.
And
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I'm trying to think ahead on the solution now. And the solution may just be to drop the A.
Oh, some of those areas, yeah, maybe that's what you do.
So,
And then,
however the board or this committee decides to act tonight on this piece of legislation, which we're not back into, with going through the zoning code and having this discussion on what each zoning thing is, if they're next door to each other, but in one of them you get an apartment and one of them you don't, the solution may be you just don't get to put it in where you get to have an apartment. Because there's no
gray area.
geographical, there's no real geographical difference for the city.
Well, I mean, but do you think that's good for the clients? Wouldn't you want to at least have recovery housing near their, where they have to go to?
Correct. So I'm
recovery?
horse trading at this point because the no's last time were this can go in Franklin County and that's too close to us.
well, there's another solution. We can get the
So-
map, there's another solution. We can get the maps.
Yeah.
And what you can do, if you wanted to, and then it'd have to be approved by city council, is everything that's OIA, make it OI, with the exception of the apartments that are already there. So they're not non-conforming. And then if somebody wants to build a new apartment complex in that OI area, then they gotta come before you and rezone it. And then they know
To
at the time
OIA.
what,
To OIA.
to OIA,
For a conditional use.
rezone it, period.
Just
Rezone
rezone it,
period.
that means
Okay.
they open it up to everything that's allowed.
James?
Just to kind of maybe clarify some of the stuff you're saying on behalf of the people who aren't here, my understanding was maybe not so much they wanted to keep it separated from anything residential, but they wanted to keep it separated from a neighborhood
Like a
type of
single
area,
family.
whereas when we're talking OIA, we're talking a lot more dense development. For example, we said we could put OTPs in C5 also, right? And C5 also allows residential. There's single-family houses and apartment buildings in C5 areas on North Main Street and that sort of thing. So, if you feel that I'm wrong on that, please, correct me. But that my understanding was that it was less about complete separation of residential and opioid treatment, and more just about we don't want to upset a neighborhood character, so much, but a larger, more dense area like an apartment and off. I would think of like Lake Boulevard, where you have one huge lot that has a bunch of apartment buildings on it, and then across the street you've got an Ohio Health Clinic, and down the road is where the VA clinic's going in.
Mhm.
So everyone, if you're moving in there, you know that you're in a little bit of a higher density, higher traffic area that
And a
there's
lot
going
of
to be.
medical.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
But my concern is now that we are being given more information, thank you. And that information could be very important to people on how they vote moving forward. And even in the best case scenario, this comes up in the next meeting. We explain to all the people who aren't here tonight what this means, and they all go, I don't care. And we move it forward. The scenario I'm planning on having is we have a robust conversation about what this means because they do care, but at least they were heard. And then we vote how we vote, and it moves forward or it
Well,
doesn't.
we can table voting on
But,
it until the next meeting.
I think we have to, if Ken's done, what we'd have to do is, we'd have to, I don't know, do we vote? Evelyn, can we vote to move it to the next meeting?
But you can table when it comes up, the item that you made last, you
Yeah.
can table
It
to
will
the
be
next
next.
meeting.
It's the next thing we're talking about.
And you have a date certain, right? The next meeting, you know when the next meeting is gonna be.
And I do want to correct, in my ordinance, I had put it as OIA, but as I look back in my notes from that evening, and we can double check maybe with the minutes and stuff, that it was OIA and C5. So when I wrote it up, it's
And C5.
and C5, which was that general commercial district for the treatment programs.
But you could make it just OI and C5, you wouldn't, and then you'd have to put beginning of OIA that includes everything except,
Opioid treatment.
yeah. So you can do that, you know. So.
Well, move on, Ken.
Yeah, if we keep moving on, then the last item you table, and then the people next, you know, do a catch-up on this. Okay, going ahead, I'm going back, definitions, I think we went through that. Non-conforming uses, on page 16, if you got a damaged building, you got a year to commence it and diligently prosecute to completion. It has changing of non-conforming uses. Non-conforming use is something that wouldn't be allowed in the district if it was new.
Grandfather.
Grandfather.
There
Yeah.
before, and therefore it's considered to continue, it's just non-conforming with the current rules.
So I'll skip that. Okay, we've got miscellaneous stuff, and
Oh, wait a minute, I just saw something. Municipal fire, this is on page 18. Nothing in this code shall prevent the construction of a municipal fire station in any use district. Oh, I already know.
yeah, and my other ones, I suggest crossing this out when we go, but you can leave it because it doesn't really do,
Just
doesn't
says
do
they
any
can-
harm because the zoning doesn't have any jurisdiction over it anyways.
Okay.
So you can just, I saw that and I was gonna cross it out. I said, nah, just leave it in there. Cause it doesn't do any harm.
Well, if they want to put a fire station there, they can do it.
It goes to city planning anyways.
Yeah.
But it's not under zoning, it has nothing to do with,
Yeah, how it's,
Okay, what
how
page
the,
are you on now?
so I'm on
18.
19. This has
19.
the districts.
Okay.
Now, what we really should, we've got residential districts, office districts, commercial. What we really need to do is put commercial districts and in parentheses, commercial/residential districts, because there's, housing is allowed in all the commercial districts. So that would be something that needs to be changed. When we go through this more, you know, slowly, and that's something the staff would do.
Industrial?
And so, industrial, there's,
We do have I3 now.
yeah, we gotta have the chart add I3, which is, that's the other change. I'm glad you caught that. That's excavating. We added that district, the council did when we got the quarry. Annexed the quarry. Okay. So we've got the different districts, and again, we're gonna have to, commercial districts on page 21, we're gonna have to say they're commercial/residential, and we're gonna have to, the first sentence, maybe changed a little bit to reflect that. We've got 5 different districts: the neighborhood district, the community shopping, central core, which is downtown, central frame, which is mostly the areas around downtown. That is similar to C3, but it requires parking. Whereas the downtown does not require on-lot parking. Industrial districts, we've got I1, I2, and now I3, just as, that's another place that needs to be changed. Zoning map is part of the code. Then, we already looked at some of these pages on page 24, 25, 26, 27. In the residential districts, this is a very good handy chart in R1A, R1B. And if you don't have a map in front of you, R1A is mostly the southeast part of town. R1B is in neighboring areas of the southeast and some areas on the far west. R1C is like Fair Park, mostly allows smaller lots. R2 and R3 are generally toward the center of the older parts of town. And so it has all the uses listed, single-family dwellings allowed in all, two-family dwellings only in R2 and R3. Multifamily churches are allowed in everywhere, public buildings allowed everywhere, that,
Lots of places.
so, keep going,
What's that?
yeah, there's exceptions on page 26, business, professional, industrial offices, and buildings having the external appearance of a residential structure. Though shown on the primary thoroughfare, they can go in on R2 or R3. So like Mount Vernon Avenue, parts of that are R2, so somebody wants to convert a home into an orthodontist office, let's say. If they meet this definition, then Zach can allow it to go in. Because Mount Vernon Avenue is a major thoroughfare.
Same with Church Street and Center.
Center Street, the same thing, but they have to meet, and they can't manufacture or sell goods. And the barber shops are similar. So then we've got our R3 multifamily, and then we've got accessory uses. So it's a handy chart to look at sometimes.
Now, see
I was following the color coding, I was like, well, it's.
When they do the conditional
This is Ward
use.
1, and it, okay, my pen went right
What
on
page
it.
are you on?
It goes up here.
27.
Group housing developments are allowed in
Some
all
of
the
the jail
residential
and the
districts.
transfer station up in this area, and this is 2,
And that, by
and
the
it goes
group
all the way over
housing,
here.
that really means
I guess it just doesn't like that.
like, PUD, doesn't it, Ken?
So then 3 is this
Yeah.
area.
Where this has confused people,
You're
I think we
here,
should maybe
it's
consider
4.
changing that
It's the whole
terminology.
area. It doesn't
Group
have,
housing
it
would
does,
lead
I'm
one
gonna
to
guess this.
believe it's like a ranch
That's the
or
hospital.
something, you
And
know,
then should be a
because
spare
you've
clinic
got
on the other
your
side, though.
MIDD hotel or your recovery housing or any of these other communal living situations. But that's really not what that is. That is saying that a whole subdivision can go in and have, that's being viewed as a group, a whole complex, and they get density breaks because maybe you have a communal park, or again, we would call this in subdivisions usually, a planned unit development.
If you can you mark yours up when you go?
I have a question. Is that like the condos between
Right,
Franklin and
Yeah.
Sefner?
that's exactly an idea.
Yep,
So
yep.
that is one thing that when I see group housing, I automatically go to more of the, some special needs
Yeah,
group.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not what that is.
Yeah, so make sure you highlight that, because that's something that the conventional wording understands a little bit different.
Hey, Ken, in the past, we have this, when people have come to us in the past and say, I want to build my garage, here's what I want my garage to look like. We say, that sounds good. They build the garage, but then we tell them, nobody can live in that garage. Is that in the code, or is that this body saying, we're gonna step out, it's not expressly forbidden, but we're gonna make sure that you're not putting an apartment above that garage to rent out to anybody. If you wanna build a garage, great, have at it, but you cannot have anybody living in it. Is that in the code?
Well, if it's a single-family district,
Yes.
single family, and they're living in the house, they can't have somebody living in the garage or on top of the garage or anything else. That's why that definition is important. And then if it's a different district, and if it's a multifamily district, they could potentially do that, go to Zach, but they've got to meet all the requirements then of a two-family with the parking and the lot size and everything, so they can't necessarily just do it anywhere.
But even though they may, through the code, have the ability to put an apartment above their garage, or build a garage with an apartment above it, city planning would have the ability to tell them, we don't want you to put a garage above
Right,
that.
you can place conditions.
Make it-
But they don't get it,
Well,
they
not
would
if it's
never even
allowed by
got it, they would, if it meets the
No,
code.
no, they usually are coming for a height variance or something.
Yeah, they're coming for-
Serious.
Oh, BZA for a height variance, yeah, you can
put
then you
additional
can put
conditions.
conditions on it, sure.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but if everything though meets the letter of the law, if it's in a R2 or higher district and it's got all of the other parking and lot size, all that sort of thing.
Right.
Zach, goes
But
down.
we
and
would be
checks off
within our-
boxes, then it doesn't come here.
But if it did,
If it did come here,
we would be
for
within
some
our
sort of
right to
variance,
say,
yeah.
you cannot put an apartment above that garage.
Right, and we did that, I remember, that last year was like the year of the garages, everyone
We've
wanted a
done
height
that multiple
variance.
times.
And you did that, even though it was already not allowed in the code, because then it would be 2 dwelling units on one single-family lot, not allowed. Yeah, I mean, you did that anyway, just to make sure that the person, like what Ken would say, belt and suspenders. So, just make sure, like, it's in the code, and now it's on a deed restriction too. Don't go don't go try to sneak in a above garage apartment behind your back.
But the other problem is the dwelling has to meet the dwelling setbacks, which is different than a garage.
Right.
So that's where so
There's a lot of different,
A lot of ins and outs.
Yeah. So give you an example, I think it was Tony Flowers that has different apartments in town.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if he still owns it, but I think he might have ended up with, there's a historic house on, Greenwood and Mount Vernon. Like white brick, and I can't remember, it's like lavender shutters.
Yeah, Bluestone Mansion?
Yeah, the attorney
Manor.
Spahn used to have that.
yeah.
So I think that's zoned R2. I'd have to look at the map. He was wondering if you could take that and make, apartments, and so in theory, you could, but you have to, it's a good sized lot. You would have to meet and then put parking in the back. So apparently, you could, in theory, do that, but you would have to have the drawings and everything, and the dimensions for a 2-family or 3-family would have to be able to fit on that lot.
He wanted to take down Bluestone Manor and put up apartments.
No, he didn't want to take it down.
He wanted to convert the manor into apartments.
He was talking about it, and they're just
People
talking.
would riot.
He owns a lot of houses like that he rents out already.
People would riot.
Well, and he owns
A lot of nice ones.
on where that is, he owns
Yep.
the,
Spaceship house.
yeah,
Yep.
and the
Oh,
pond
spaceship.
that becomes a pond, isn't
Yep.
it?
Yeah.
If you ever see it, you'll know.
Yeah, it's octagonal.
Yeah.
It's the house, it's
See you,
behind,
King's Mansion?
it's behind,
That's
like, it
where
looks
it's
like
at.
woods. It looks like, oh, look at all those shrubs and woods. It is behind it. It's the second to last house before Graham.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But when it's the fall, and all the leaves fall off, and you drive by it, the back deck of that thing looks like the USS Enterprise.
Like 3 or 4 different round sections.
It's rounded. It's amazing. It's like, and if it was me, I would take all the shrubs down because it's just, like architecture wise, beautiful.
It's by grant.
Tom gave it.
What? Yeah, so, do you know King's Mansion?
So people get these poems, they have the right to, if it meets the code, to
Church
change
sits on 95.
But you gotta, once again, you got a lot of hoops you gotta
That was
jump
like a.
through.
Yeah, you just can't
So
go
you
in there.
can't just-
His
yeah.
wife's house or
Yeah.
something like
No,
that.
it was, the guy's name was King.
Oh, okay.
That was his
All
mansion.
right, page
I forget what he did.
27, we're on.
Yeah, we're gonna, just go a little bit further here.
Bluestone Manor, that
We
church.
covered OI and OIA pretty good. Commercial
Their
districts,
parking
we've
lot
got
for the
C1A,
church is part
C1B,
of
they're
that
just
pond
slightly
that he's
different,
talking about.
Okay.
But this house is on the
allow
other side
slightly
of the
different
street,
things.
so
Okay.
These are generally
I
right
don't know what he-
next to holes.
Parking lot used to be the pond.
Yeah.
So it only allows certain uses, like in older neighborhoods where you can have a grocery store, a bakery, a drugstore. It's not where, car dealers or
Long time ago.
gas stations. C1B, you can add restaurants, furniture stores.
And sometimes there's square footage.
Yeah, and small gas
limitations.
stations,
Upset
small
that
gas
they really
stations.
wanted to do that.
C2 allows a little bit more things.
King's
uh,
Mansion, and they-
Again,
Talked about how
might
they
be closer to
wanted to
homes,
keep it
but not
legal or
necessarily
local.
next to them.
and then
I
use
don't,
an
can't
outside
remember
company to
what
do
the
but it looks
district
awesome.
is in Fair Park
It does
on
look
Richmond Avenue. I think
glad
that's
they-
C2.
They got it done.
Right there in the front.
Have you been by?
Yeah.
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 C3 is downtown, and it allows mixed use, like for example, on page 36, dwelling units of the type permitted and regulated in R3 district provided, they shall not occupy more than 50% of the first floor.
Okay.
So, like,
I have no idea.
the building next door, you could have a mixture of housing and commercial, as long as the commercial had over 50, the office had over 50%. So the idea is to keep it more, a lot of the first floor is more commercial or office.
And particularly on the frontage side, so you want it to look like it's retail, it might be only
Oh, I
some
might,
deep
this
in,
might
but
be me.
then
Right.
combine the housing a little bit.
But the upper floors, you can have as many
black
units as
line
you can
that
fit,
That
and
says
meet
to
the
live.
code. I mean, you've got more than 3 units, you gotta meet the state building code. And then also, if you have a mixture, you gotta, everyone knows that, you gotta meet, state building code. So here's all the things allowed in downtown,
I just.
so, one of the things we struggled with was, adult entertainment, and that was that's number 8. So that's, conditional permitted uses. Then C4, any principal use allowed in C3, this is on page 38, dwelling units is regulated in the R3 district. So then, you know, so if somebody wants to.
R2 district.
R3.
Oh, wait a minute, excuse me, you're in C4?
Yep.
Okay.
So you go back, so somebody, you know, wants to do an apartment, it's vacant land zone R3, they just go back, it's C4, they just go back to the R3 district for the dimensions. That's all it means. C5 is similar. And again, C5 is mostly on the like far north Main Street, far south Delaware Avenue, far east Mount Vernon Avenue. So, I'm just gonna go through these real fast. You can read industrial district, there's I-1. These are some of the areas that are closer to homes. They have restrictions, on things like, they don't, size and jackhammers and stuff, weldings, and then whereas I-2, you don't have those limitations. So I-2 allows almost anything except quarries, which is I-3, the new mineral extraction district, which is on page 44. And that has a whole bunch of protections in it. So, again, I'm just gonna go, and by the way, if there's any questions between now and the next meeting,
We know where you
we can
live.
go back and, you know, planned development projects, I am gonna skip this. This is called these are things where a developer can come in with a big piece of land and say, I'm gonna have this community, and I can get, you'll give him density breaks if he has like common parks or areas. We have not used, some of these that much for the reason that, for the most part, we don't have that large of a tract, and for the most part, they've been able to do stuff using the existing zoning code. And even in Marion Township, in Clarendon, we haven't used it hardly at all, because they can use the existing zoning code. Mobile home parks, there's requirements here for mobile home parks. They also have to, these have to be approved by the State Department of Health. If they were, or is it, there was a change to the building. They were gonna change, but it has to be approved by the state to lay out. We're talking about a bona fide mobile home park with mobile homes. If they have individual manufactured homes on a lot, that's different. That's different. But we have those too. Again, with this, we're gonna get just a few more pages here. Group housing developments, that's what she was talking about, group more like group homes, we gotta clarify and use the same terminology both places. Because group housing developments is probably what we're talking about. And again, this is, again, another type of planned development, which we really haven't used that much. But there's all different formulas here that we would check it out. Because most of the developers have been able to come in and use our existing zoning code and not have to have all this special provisions. So we get to page 62 and 63. This is a section that we're using all the time. This has the lot, yard, court, and building height standards, and the chart on page 63 has the dimensions for all the different districts. Single family in like southeast, like Chateau Ridge, and the 80-foot lot, 12,000 square feet. R1B 70 foot width, 8,400. R1C, which is Fair Park, like 50 by 6,000 square feet.
Too many years or too much.
R2 allows also townhouses, and how much you can get on the lot depends on how many bedrooms are in each townhouse. If it's a one bedroom, you gotta have 3,000 square feet of lot area for each unit. If it's a two bedroom, you gotta have 3,500. And R3 is similar, but it allows higher density.
One thing that we do need to correct in R3 when we make a recommendation is R3 does allow for single-family homes, but it's not listed on the chart. It's a use there, but we don't have any dimensional standards for it in the R3. So the presumption is you would do maybe what's going on in the R2, but if we want to change that minimum frontage for the R3 district to maybe like 45 feet, now would be the time to do it. Because again, we have a lot of parcels that are kind of small, and maybe by allowing them to be as small as 40 or 45 feet, that would make a lot of our parcels that are right now considered unbuildable, buildable. You know, and they would be in only that height.
And there's a lot of those are the houses we've torn down, aren't they?
Right.
A lot of those lots.
Yeah. So that might be, think of, and Zach and I were gonna kind of play around with some other parts of the code too on the non-conforming lot provisions, but that, I think, because right now that chart doesn't have dimensions for single family.
Well, if we're doing it, we might as well do it all
We
now.
might as well do it, and we might as well make it something a little different than what we already have to make it useful to somebody.
I think that was in this chart when it was amended, but it might have got lost when somebody printed up the code. Yeah, but you could do something fresh.
Yeah, I think it's worth a fresh look
Yeah.
nowadays with so many parcels that are small and the building industry asking for smaller parcels, given the cost of development nowadays.
So then we got the dimensions for the OI and OIA, and again, you gotta sit down and go through these slower. These are hard to go through, but they work pretty well. I think I haven't had any problems. We haven't run into major problems with needing too many variances or anything for any of this. Now, the last thing I wanted to cover before tonight at least was on page 68. And this is a very important section, exceptions to and applications of lot area, yard, and building height. So, in a district where it's permitted, a single-family dwelling may be erected on a lot which is non-conforming as to area or width. In other words, doesn't meet standards in that previous chart. Provided, however, that where 3 or more abutting lots of record were held in one ownership at the effective date of this zoning code, and where 1 or more are non-conforming, the exception in this division shall not apply. So if I got one lot, or 2 lots that are smaller than what the new, what's you're supposed to have now, you can still try to build a home on those lots. But if you got 3 of them in a row, 3, 4, 5, you've got to re-subdivide the lots and make them the current size. So that's what that's saying. And so that's, that's something, it's a sort of a grandfather clause for smaller lots.
Providing there's 3 or more contiguous,
If
correct?
if there's less than 3 or more.
Yeah,
If it's
if
more than
there's
3,
you have to
3 or more, you've got to redo them
Yeah.
so that they meet the code.
Okay.
On bottom of page 68, something I already talked to, like the front yard, where the buildings on either side are closer or further apart, except it says how he would measure it, except no front yard shall be more than 40 feet and none less than 10.
We've gone through that.
So if you're on a street where there's a vacant lot and one house is 8 feet from the street and the one on the other side is 9 feet, you have to you can't make it less than 10.
And this is all stuff that Zach would have the right to be able to issue that permit without coming to us, because that's already written in the code.
And we've gone through, had some of those in the past.
Right.
So, and if they're 15 feet and 15 feet, then it would be 15 feet. But if it's under 10, now they want you to, we don't want another house real, because the 2 houses on either side might fall down, and then you're stuck with this new house that's 8 foot from the street. So, I mean, it's, side yard exceptions, application. So this is one for narrow lots. He can, and you take, 1.5 inches this is on page 69, 1.5 inches may be deducted from the required least width of side yard and 3 inches from the required sum of width for each foot by which the lot is narrower than the required lot. So this is based on a lot, for each foot that is smaller. So then again, you got to sit down and carefully read this. But you can do this formula, and it takes, for a lot, like 5-10 minutes to figure it out. But this then allows some buildings on smaller lots that are existing. So if you were to, let's say, adopt a zoning code for Upper Arlington or Dublin or some other place, you would lose all this, because they don't have this type of thing in there, because they don't have that situation.
Yeah.
So,
They don't have any narrow lots.
yeah, they generally don't have it. Rear yard exceptions.
Post-World War II development.
Yeah. Rear yard exceptions for shallow lots. So these are all things in there that are written.
This is new, I don't recall in this, D on page 69, the side yard exception, I don't recall ever seeing this part where it says side yard exception in the R2 and the R3 districts specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? It says it was done in 2005, something about townhomes, so.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember it. I think Dan Stewart worked on it, but I was involved a little bit with it. Because we had people that was trying to redevelop some of the lots. So if it's okay, I think this would be a good place to end, and then we could sort of go over this real quick next time, and then go on.
So as you can see, the first half are all the uses, and then the second half of the code are where you get into the dimensional standards, so we at least covered all those types of uses.
You'll get into stuff like parking and signs and
Cool.
fences.
Thank you, Ken.
Yes, thanks, Ken.
Okay.
So, moving on, we're gonna go back to the first item, which was the OIA for opioid treatment facilities. And we had discussion during the presentation over the zoning code. So, does anybody have any questions about the zoning for this particular piece of legislation to be advanced?
I just think we should table, I think we should halt now until our next meeting.
Okay,
That way we can determine that, and we will have all bodies here.
so
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
before you take the roll, I have the next one is March 11th, is that correct?
Should be.
Should be?
Okay.
Second Tuesday?
Yeah. Okay, and then,
And what we can do is also give you a map that
That'll help.
makes those three districts, I'm gonna say, will identify them a little more
So-
clearly.
Oh, yeah, I can just
OI,
isolate those on the
Yeah,
GIS.
OIA and the C5, since that one had been in our earlier. So you can kind of see where they are and think if that's too much or too few, and then we'll look at those particular districts, their uses and how they roll up and,
Well, and we got a chance to look at all these bullet points that
Yeah.
Ken was talking about too.
yeah.
so I have a question before we vote. I do want to have the vote, I don't want this to affect the vote. And you don't have to answer now, you can like research it and say, yes, we can, or no, we can't do that. But my reasoning bringing up garages was to say, could we at the next meeting say, instead of saying we're gonna drop OIAs out of it completely, we're going to let you place an opioid treatment facility within an OIA district, but you cannot have an apartment above it.
It's conditional.
It's conditional. So you can put it there, but treatment facilities and apartments cannot be mixed use within the city
On the same lot.
on the same lot.
They can be on adjacent lots then.
Yeah, so if you want to have an apartment next door, great. But if I have a opioid treatment facility in my building, I cannot have an apartment in my building at all, period. Now, we can,
Even if you wanted it to be recovery housing?
I don't want you, no. Even if you wanted it to be for your grandmother.
Okay.
Mm-mm. So, just something to chew on, because I think it would be easier to make that narrow exception than it would be to try to hash it out all over again where they're
That's a
going.
pretty quick fix.
Yeah. So if we can't do that, if you want to come back in March and say, listen, that was a good suggestion, but Christian, we can't do that, well, then we hash it out again, and that's fine. But just food for thought while we're not here for the next
Good
month.
food.
If you would take the vote, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Dunstan?
Yes.
Mr. Russell? Or Mrs. Russell, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Ruth?
Yes.
And Mr. Zucker?
Yes.
I will entertain seeing as there's no more business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Good job, people.
We're adjourned.
I'm gonna shut the audio off.